Hey y'all, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to Leisha's Library. If this is your first time in the library, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for clicking on this video. And I hope that you enjoy what you see and hear and decide to stick around. So, as you can tell by the title of today's video, I'm going to be giving y'all my February wrap-up. Wrap-ups are slowly becoming one of my favorite things to do, my favorite type of videos to do, because I love talking about the books that I read, the movies that I watched, the music that I've been listening to, or whatever media I've been watching. Because, listen, I don't necessarily watch a lot of media, but this, turning this channel in this direction where I'm including everything is inspiring me to watch a lot of more media. And it's a lot of things that are actually on my list that I do need to watch. So we're going to be watching together. A watch party, if you will. But, sorry, a tangent. But like I said, if this is your first time being here, make sure you hit that subscribe. And if this is not your first time, hey friend, how you doing? Welcome back. So, I'm not going to ramble too on, but I will be listing all of the books, the music, and the media that I talk about in the description box below. So if you are interested to see, maybe you were doing something else and you didn't really catch exactly what the name was, you can just check that down there and let's get into it. So I have my phone here and my iPad here because, listen, I'm in grad school. It's a lot going on in this head of mine. And sometimes I forget things. So charge it to my head and not my heart. And sometimes I don't necessarily remember all of the books all the way, but I remember them. So I read a total of 10 books this month. Yay! That is one more than I read last month, which is not a competition thing, and I'm not competing with anybody but myself. And I'm not necessarily competing because at this rate, I am definitely surpassing my 75 book goal for the year. But it's become like a ritual. So I read daily, and I have not been reading consistently these last couple of days because life been lifing, and it's been throwing me off a little bit. But that's neither here nor there. Just giving y'all some little insight. So I read a total of 8 books this month, and I'm also going to be including my stats. So the stats that I'm including are on StoryGraph. I'll be inserting them on the screen. So those are what you're going to be seeing. This being off-center is really bothering me. Uno momento. Yeah. So I read a total of, for the month of February, I read a total of 10 books, and that was 2,456 pages, which is kind of crazy. And it took me on average about 6 days. I don't necessarily count that for real because next month you'll understand. Because I got a book that I'm going to finish this month that I was hoping to finish in February that I did not finish. And it's been on there for a while. I've been dragging it through. But most of the books that I read were pretty much medium paced. I'm noticing so far that I'm not really picking up a lot of books that are fast-paced at all. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's not necessarily a good thing. I think medium is the exact sweet spot that I like being in. Like, I don't want a book to be taking me too fast where it's over really quickly. And I'm like, damn, I missed that book already. But I also don't need it to drag. Like, please. Please. The majority of the books that I read were less than 300 pages, with most of them being, about 60% of the books being less than 300 pages, and then 40% of the books were between 300 to 400, less than 500 pages. And then keeping along with my trend from last month, I read 80% fiction and 20% nonfiction. I did read 2 nonfiction books this year, and I'm really, really proud of that. I think this year, I'm saying a year. Have I been saying a year sometime? This month, I read 2 nonfiction books, and I think last month I only read 1. So shout out to that. That was one of my goals, to definitely like up my nonfiction. And so I read 2 nonfiction books, and the rest of them, the other 8, were fiction books. My top genre was romance and historical, surprisingly. But you know, romance, that's me and her go together real bad. And for format wise, I read the bulk of them digitally, which should not be a surprise. I'm trying to change that, but so far, I'm sorry. The books on Kindle Unlimited got me real bad. And it's nothing wrong with that, but I am, hello, I'm trying to build my library, baby, so I need the physical books. Although some of the books that I have read on physical Kindle, I do want to get physically, so they're going to be in here regardless. But still. But I read 60% of my books digitally, 10% audio, and then 30% were print, which I'm really proud of that. I do want, like I said, I do want to get that up. And then, as I mentioned in my 2026 books I want to read in 2026, I do not rate my books anymore. I feel like a star rating is too general and it is subjective. And so I would rather just let's talk about the books and explain what I like or did not like and what I got from it versus just giving you a number rating or a star rating. So yeah. But let's get into it. I want to start with the digital books. Actually, we can start on audio. That was probably the last book I read. So the book I read on audio, I only read one, and it was Dapper Dan's book. Dapper Dan made it in Harlem. And I am a fashion designer. I have a deep, extensive background in love and passion, like genuine passion and adoration for fashion, and especially like Black fashion and the Black impact on fashion. And being that I am a Black designer, I'm a female designer as well. I am really intrigued by learning other designer stories. And Dapper Dan, I think, is one of the most exquisite examples of like a rose from the concrete, a rose that grew in the concrete. And I think that learning about him was very interesting. I was very surprised at a lot of the things that I found out about him. And so this memoir, it dives deep into like his like impact on fashion and the fashion industry, but we really get the whole gist of his life and his journey. And I actually learned so much and did not know so much about him. So he was born and raised in Harlem, and we kind of get a inside look, like basically we're a fly on the wall to him telling the story, which is also narrated by Omari Hardrick, by the way. So I thought that was cool. His voice I could maintain and not get too distracted or not get like, and not necessarily just have it as background noise per se. I could like constantly stay focused with it and without like missing part of the story. So that's one thing to note, because as I enter into reading more audio, that's one thing that kind of is very touch and go with me. Like sometimes it's not, the voice might mess me up, might throw me off. It doesn't sound like how I think it's going to sound, and I'm just not with it. But this one being read by Omari Hardrick, which I thought it was going to be read by Dapper Dan himself, but it was not. But Omari Hardrick was a very surprising substitute, and he did very, very well. Like I said, we get basically a fly on the wall perspective of Dapper Dan from when he was growing up, and basically how he's raised. He was raised in a very initially loving family, but as you go on throughout this book, you kind of see how everybody starts. For the most part, all of them kind of fall to their own vices. Specifically, like a lot of the boys, including Dapper Dan and his mom, we kind of understand like how their dynamics change and how him growing up and seeing her fall to her vices affected him and how he ended up eventually falling for his own vices. But it's basically a great example of like, I don't want to say a come up story, but in a way it kind of was, because you get to see how he rose to where he is now, being such a revered person in fashion, and the way that he kind of paved his own way and how he even fell into fashion. Like he didn't grow up just like wanting to be a fashion designer or anything like that. It kind of just fell in his lap, and him being just so enthralled and interested in so many different things and having these different interests. Like at one point he was going to school to be a journalist, and I thought that was so interesting too, because I never would have like pinned that on him. But even like the journey of him going to school and like going to school for journalism and being like a novice journalist, and how that led to him going to Africa, and how going to Africa kind of led to him being in fashion, and how it kind of just stuck with him. I thought that was a very intriguing story, and I definitely think if you are interested in fashion, but honestly, you don't necessarily have to be interested in fashion at all to really, you know, be immersed and intrigued into this book, because like I said, the fashion bit is like the last 30% maybe. The rest of it, you are really getting the story of his life and how, he has overcame so much. And I think it's a really great, great story. So I highly, highly recommend it be read. It was literally one of my favorite books that I've read this month. And I'm definitely gonna get a physical version to go on my shelf, to be right up there. I don't know if y'all can see that next to Untitled, because hello, Black icons, Black fashion icons, male Black fashion icons. Okay, so yeah. The next book I'll read, I will go into my books that I read digitally. So the books that I read digitally, I read 6 books digitally. Let's start. Okay, where should I start? Let's start. Let's start with my girl Charity Shanee. So Charity Shanee, I read. We in the digital books, not the audio books anymore. I read 180 by Charity Shanee. And listen, my girl, one thing about her, she gonna get you hooked and you gonna be so enthralled in the book that you're gonna want to finish it in one sitting. And plenty of these books that I read this month, especially the ones on Kindle, were like this. And I was just like, okay, I get it. So we get a relationship between Gideon G. Powers and what's my girl name? Rianne. So I do remember this story. Like I said, it took me a minute for it to come back to me. So Gideon and he goes by G, but his name is Gideon. So Gideon and Rianne are the 2 main characters of the story. And so we kind of enter the story from, I believe, Gideon's perspective. And Gideon, he is a son within this very powerful, affluent family. And basically, they have very successful businesses around the city, but they also are dabbling into the underworld, and that's really where their money at. But Gideon, his father is about to retire and take a step down, but he is looking to pass the business over to one of his sons, but the son has to be married. And so we open the book up at a wedding, and it is Gideon's younger brother getting married. But Gideon wants that CEO spot because Gideon is he is the one that was basically destined to be the CEO. He is the most responsible, the most reliable one. And basically his brother was messing up from the get-go. We open the book up and Gideon has got to clean up one of his mess. And when I say Gideon cutthroat, baby, he don't play. He don't play. Him and Tangy, once you read that book, you gonna know what I'm talking about. You gonna know who Tangy is. I said, oh, okay, that's crazy. But so basically, he's in a time crunch. So that's what the name of this book was called 180 by Charity Shanee. I think I did. But Gideon is in time crunch because his father is set to retire in about 6 months. And because his father, I'm finna retire in 6 months and me and your mama finna go out the country and do our thing. You know what I'm saying? And so Gideon was like, okay, I have 6 months to get married and find a wife. And his struggle was he didn't want to just get married to just anybody for the sake of getting married, which was what his friends and what his people were trying to get him to do. He was like, I have seen my parents be in love. They have set such a prime example for what good love and a good relationship looks like and a good marriage looks like. He cherishes it and he honors it and respects it so much where he's like, I'm not finna play with y'all. So he takes his chances. And at that wedding, enter Rianne. Rianne is there because she's with her cousin. That's all I would say. But she is at this wedding with her cousin, and her and Gideon cross paths, and then we are set from there. Baby Gideon, when I say I want me a man that don't play about me, I like that. I like that. Gideon is an example of it. However, don't know. I think he went to the extremes. I don't want a man to go to the extremes. But I do love that. I love that he did not play about her, and it was literally one of my favorite books. Another one of my favorite books I read this month. I think it will stay with me forever. Charity Shanee writes excellent books, and every single book, I believe, for the most part, every single book that I've read by her, I have absolutely loved and adored. And this book was not off that list. Okay, it is definitely in that number as well. And it also has a sequel. It has 2 sequels. So it is 182, which is a continuation but features different characters as the main characters, but we also meet those characters in book 1. And then there is a Christmas novella as well. But I definitely want to continue the series. I am debating on if I want to go ahead and get the physicals and just go ahead and like read it physically. I think I want to do that. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. But I loved 180. Like, loved it down. And that was one of the books I read on Kindle. And then the next book I read was Only for Me. And this is Only for Me by Casey Mills. Casey Mills is also another author that I really love pretty much everything that she writes. And like her and that pen and go together like me and her books real bad. So, okay, I'm reading part of the description to refresh my memory. But so Only for Me, we have Makari and Omiri. So this is a second chance romance with I don't think this will be considered a surprise baby because you do know it going into it. But yeah, okay. I'm like, I thought I spoiled it, but it says it in the description. So yeah, it's not necessarily a surprise baby because you do kind of learn about it in the synopsis. Unless you just did not want to know that. Sorry, my bad. But Makari and Omiri, they met one night, had a little one night stand, and they went about their business. And yeah, and Makari is holding a big secret, which so happens to be her daughter. And we go on a journey of basically she was kind of ducking that man and he ran across her randomly one night, like a year or so later. And he is like, that's my baby. That look like my baby. That's my baby. And we go from there. So I think it was a great story. I do love how the thing I like about Casey Mills' writing is you don't really leave it with unresolved questions. She kind of answers it and lays it out. It's not a lot of miscommunication in there. It is some conflict, but it's never like something that's just very outlandish and unrealistic. I love it about her writing, as well as Sherry Shanee too. I think they have very comparable writing styles with them. So I feel like if you like Sherry Shanee, you would like Casey Mills and vice versa. So yeah, but that was Only for Me. This is a sports romance though, too. It's a sports romance football player. If that's your thing, you will love it. Trust. Then we have 2 Weeks to Love, and this is by Kay Shanee. Also, am starting to like more and more of Kay Shanee's books. But this is about a relationship therapist, Eva, and she and her man just broke up. Like, she realizes that he kind of strung her along. They were engaged to be married, and every time she tried to set a date, like, he was just avoiding, not really trying to do it. And so she ends up ending their engagement, and she called her sister, and her sister was like, girl, just go take you a little vacation. You need it. Be there for 2 weeks. Relax your mind and don't worry about it. And then, so she does that. And while she is on vacation, we get, while she's on vacation, she gets a surprise, unexpected visitor who is Solomon. They call him Solo. And he is there because he also been dating, having a hard time dating. He also is a divorcee. And so he was a divorcee. He new in the streets, new in the field. He like, I'm sick of it. He telling his homeboy, I'm sick of it. His homeboy is married to Eva's sister. You see where we're going here? So he on the phone, he's telling his homeboy his problems. I'm like, man, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of this. These women they ain't, you know what I'm saying? It's hard out here. And his homeboy is like, you know what you need? A vacation. And so he ends up going on a trip to the same place, same location, same house as Eva, and they are set up unbeknownst to them. And we kind of just go on a journey of watching them kind of interact with each other. So it's very much close proximity. And a little bit of he falls first. Like, he is just like, yo. He also catches her in a interesting predicament. So, hey, that's all I would say. But I definitely really enjoyed 2 Weeks to Love. It was very like quick and to the point, like 157 pages. I wish it would have been a little bit longer so we could have got to see a little bit more. That was the only thing. I do wish it could have been just a tad bit longer so we can kind of get more detail, more depth. But I do appreciate the way that it was, like, it didn't necessarily feel rushed. It was just short and sweet, but I wanted it to be just a little bit longer. I just be wanting more, And then we have, I read 109, which was 109 AM by L.B. Gaines, which was an erotica. Basically, our main character, her name is Ava, and she is like found herself in this very like mundane kind of life, and she is reminiscing on an erotic experience that she had about 10 years ago on a whim. And she keeps like going back to that in her mind, and she just feels like life's a little dull. And she remembers this experience and was like, that was the most like fun I had. And honestly, I would say like, it wasn't that crazy. Like, it was like, okay, because this is a part of a series. It did not, even though the other books are by different authors, this is a part of the 2 AM series. And I believe this came out this year. I just did not, this was also my first book by this author as well. I didn't really necessarily like it. I didn't care for it. Like, it was cool, but it kind of left you unsure if it actually, like, what happened actually happened. And I don't like when authors write dream sequences. Not necessarily when they write in dream sequences and it leaves you unclear if what happened actually happened or not. Or maybe it was my comprehension that failed in that moment, but I don't know. It kind of left it a little bit murky for me, to the point where I feel like maybe it could have just been a little bit more. If we could have got it a little bit longer, this was also 127 pages. Maybe if we could have got it a little bit longer, it would have been a little bit more fleshed out, and it would have made a little bit more sense on the ending part. Because I was good on it until we got to the end, and I was just like, so was this a dream or what? Like, I don't know. I wanted more for them. So, yeah. But if you are just in it, which this is more of I'm in it for the erotic factor of it, then this will be your thing. I'm learning that I do enjoy an erotica. However, that sounds crazy. I do enjoy an erotica, but the erotica got to have a little bit of plot. Because if I just wanted to read, because I've read an erotica with a plot. Like I read 1201 by Bella J and it had a plot. Like it had a plot. It made some more sense. This one, the plot was there, but was it? Okay, so the next book that I read on Kindle was I read Sweet Heat and Tequila Shots by Shanel. This is a cowboy romance, a small town romance, and it is about our main female character. Let me get her name really quickly. Her name is Peyton, and she moved from St. Louis to Alabama, baby, the country South. And she is moving there to get a fresh start. She moves with her son, and she has been going through a difficult period in her life, and she just really just wants a fresh start. She moved away from her family, her friends, everybody she know, and now she in this small town where you gonna hear about your business the second you tell it. You gonna hear it. Word travels fast around there because it's only so many people. And she is an elementary school teacher, and she is like great with kids. So great, in fact, that her student, one of her students, is chatting about her and whatnot. And her daddy comes to pick her up from school, and enter Bass. So Bass is a great parent. He's a great dad. He is co-parenting with a woman that he realized after a while they were not meant to be together. And he's a great co-parent, a very country man. He got a lot of land. He do his big one. He has some little bit of some familial issues with his family, but he's a family man through and through, and he a country boy. Okay, he don't play. And I love it. And he was just what Peyton needed. And I loved them. I loved them together. I love how the story was written. It really just didn't leave too much for you to just like feel like you missed or needed more from. It was a great story. And I think, I could do a little part 2. If she want to do that. I think that deserves a little extension. I would love to see more and more about them, but who am I to be asking, to be pushing these authors' pens? But I loved it. It was a great story. The next one, the last book I read on digitally on Kindle was Permission to Love You by Mandee. And this was my first book by Mandee, but it will not be my last because I thoroughly enjoyed this. So we are setting the scene with Monroe. She is the main female character, and she is in this relationship that is very like toxic, and we can see from the get-go like the dude that she with is not it, and he's very insecure, and they get into a bit of a conflict that is basically due to him being insecure and all of his insecurities and whatnot. And she ends up in a very unsavory predicament due to him, and where she has to basically pick herself back up and start over. And she does not have the best support system. Her family, her sister and her mom are not the greatest people, and they are the last people that she wants to run to, but she ends up going to them for a little bit, and she remembers quickly why she does not go to them often. And so we are seeing from her side, her pick herself back up with her friend. Her best friend is trying to, do as much as she can to kind of like keep her girl up and keep her going, keep her motivated and whatnot. And then they go out. Her best friend is like, girl, come on, get cute. Pop out a little bit. You fine. That man ain't take all your light, baby. You fine. You still look good. And she just begrudgingly agrees. And she goes out and has a decent time. And she ends up meeting this man. And it's almost a little bit of rude to him. And he is just like, is you cool? And the man that we meet is Gavin. Gavin is a former baseball player. So this is also a sports romance. He's a former baseball player. And yeah, he does not play baseball anymore, but he in fact on a nonprofit, and he is very much so a family man. He rides for his family, he rides for his people. He is just taking care of his sweet grandma, and I thought that was so cute. And they cross paths, and they do not get off on the best start, but they end up getting on the right foot. You know what I mean? And we kind of go on a little route with them. We get a little bit of revenge, some twists, some turns. Somebody trying to get their get back. Somebody just being a flat out hater. And yeah, we go on a little ride, and basically it's just about them finding love again, because Gavin is also in an interesting part of his life where he is just newly single as well. Not as fresh as Monroe, but still kind of fresh. And he has some overcoming to do with the background and the experiences that he's had, which also gets a little tricky. So yeah, I definitely would recommend reading it. Like I said, that would not be my last book by Mandee, but those were all of the books that I read digitally. Now let's get into the physical books, okay? Because it ain't that many, but every single one packed a punch. Okay, let's start off with the nonfiction that I read this month. The other nonfiction I read was Blackballed, The Black Vote in U.S. Democracy by Darryl Pinckney. I really enjoyed this. It is a very small book. It was literally like 100 pages. And I read this. I felt pulled to read it. And I don't often talk politics as much on here, but I am very vocal about the political climate and my thoughts. So I do from time to time read books that align with those things. Like last month, I read Kamala Harris's book, The 170 Days, to talk about her journey as she was building this campaign for her most recent presidential election run. And I thought this was a great way to follow up with that, because even with the current political climate and even with the current conversation surrounding the SAVE Act and how that would affect voting and what that looks like and who gets to vote, X, Y, and Z. And I thought reading this kind of put a lot of that into perspective, especially the conversation when it comes to, is voting a right or a privilege? Voting has always been a right. You literally have the right to vote. And to see this current administration and those who are basically just amplifying it go out of their way to restrict and restrain people from trying to vote and X, Y, and Z, we kind of see how much power our votes and our voices really have. And I think this was a great companion read with everything and these conversations that have been happening. And actually, this was released in 2014, and it was released it was written in the midst of President Barack Obama's second term. But we kind of get a little bit of memoir aspects in this as well, because the author is also talking about his life and his parents and how his parents kind of like raised him to be aware of certain things, and how, it was kind of like very heartwarming and just interesting to see his parents' like perspective on certain things and certain events that were going on, and to be able to go through everything they went through in their life, and to see, a Black man become president. And reading parts of that kind of just made me very emotional, because thinking about everything that Black people as a whole have went through to, even just the right to vote, and the way that, we have kind of been pawns in politics, and how people have tried to, appeal to us for certain reasons, and how, Black people became synonymous with being Democrat and X, Y, and Z. And so I think reading this kind of informed me a lot about a lot of the things that I necessarily weren't aware of, but it also affirmed some things that I was aware of. And I think it was a very important read to have. And I highly recommend everybody read this, especially if you are Black, especially if you are, in conversations with people who are on the fence about voting. I think that you cannot read this book. First of all, I don't understand that perspective of, not wanting to vote for whatever reason. But I don't think that you could read this book in good faith and then still have that same perspective, because a lot of things I read really made me upset at how many people that I have encountered personally that were kind of on the fence on voting or just outright did not want to vote. And so, yeah, this was not required reading, but it was a very fulfilling read. So I definitely would recommend. The next book I read was Queen of Exiles by Vanessa Riley. This is a historical fiction, and it tells the story of the first and only Black queen of Haiti. And her name was Queen Marie Louise Christophe. And we kind of go in this book, we kind of jump like times. And so we are going back and forth between the pre-fall of the king, and then post-fall and visiting the queen in exile. And it goes back and forth between those times of before and afterwards. And we kind of see how she navigated that in a very interesting time. And we get a little bit more of the inside scoop, to a certain extent, because it is historical fiction. It's not necessarily all truth, but it kind of paints a great perspective and a great picture of what she experienced during this time. I do love that in the book, there were a lot of little news clippings, excerpts in here that were actual news clippings that were written during that time. I don't know if y'all could see. I might take a picture and insert it if y'all cannot. But it was a lot of clippings. Oh, this bookmark was in here too. It was a lot of clippings that were intertwined to kind of corroborate with the story. And I thought that was really interesting. I did really enjoy this book. However, I will say it took me a very long time to get through this book because it is very slow paced. And it's very slow paced. But that last 100 pages really does drag you into, not drag you, it kind of grips you and kind of you get very enthralled in it, because the last 100 pages, my goodness, it gets intense. And we get to see so much of the things of what she went through. Queen Marie Louise, she suffered so much. This book is very heavy. It talks a lot about grief, a lot about grief, a lot of conversation about war in a way. It also talks a lot about the acquisition of countries, because it talks of it kind of referenced, of course, Haiti becoming a free democracy, and then free republic, and then their conflict with France is a big topic of conversation in this book. It also mentions a little bit more else. I believe Congo is mentioned in this book, which I thought was really interesting, given what's going on with Congo and what has been going on with Congo. I thought that was an interesting through line within it. But it does get a little bit dark and intense. I do say I would recommend reading this. I don't necessarily, because of how slow paced it was, it kind of puts me on the fence if I wanted to continue to read this book. Because I wanted to read this anyway because I read Sky Full of Elephants, and it was a connection there that I don't really want to get too much into just in case you have not read it. But it was a connection there which made me interested in reading Queen of Exiles because I've had this on my shelf for a very, very, very long time. And the author has books that have come out. She released a book earlier in January, Fire, Sword, and Sea, that I was interested in. But I was like, let me at least read this book first before I get another one. And I'm glad I did that. But it also kind of like, I don't know, it has me on the fence if I want to continue to read her writing because I did kind of enjoy the writing style. I did not enjoy the pace of the book. It was a little bit too slow for my liking. So that was the only thing that I will say that I did not care for. Other than that, I did enjoy the book. It wasn't too dense. I mean, it's dense. It's a thick book. This was the longest book that I read, but it kind of, I don't know. Maybe it was a little bit of the writing style that I just did not vibe with like that. But I will say the pacing of this book was just, my goodness, it was slow as all outdoors. So yeah, but I did enjoy what I gained from it. So yeah, Queen of Exiles by Vanessa Riley. And last but not least, we have Sula by Toni Morrison. So if you watched my last video, I'm not sure when it's going. If you have watched one of my most recent videos, the authors that I want to read more of, I mentioned Toni Morrison in that book, and I mentioned that I had read one of her books already. This is the book in question. I read Sula, and this was my entryway into Toni Morrison's writing. And Sula kind of left me. First of all, Toni Morrison, me and her would be cool because I know it's been a lot of like conversation on Threads specifically around Toni Morrison and like how she was quote unquote mean or whatever. First of all, that lady won a Nobel Peace Prize. She know how to talk to y'all. Hello, like, I mean, she could, but like, her writing was a way of speaking to y'all. Why do she gotta, you know what I'm saying? But that's neither here nor there. Toni Morrison is very funny. Sula was messy, but it was also a little funny. And I think it was a bigger conversation. It's a conversation about freedom and the freedom to choose, the freedom to live life the way however you see fit. But I also think a part of that was the conversation around like, you are who raised you. Like, you are a reflection of the people that raised you. And we kind of go into this knowing that it's going to be two friends that are, you know, kind of a little bit, one is more codependent than the other. And then we kind of see how their upbringings affect their dynamics and how they move throughout life. And so we have Nell and we have Sula, and they are raised two totally different ways within two different circumstances. And we kind of see how that affects them, where, you know, Nell is a little bit more rigid. She, you know, doesn't really rock the boat. Like, she kind of just goes with whatever. And Sula is, you know, a person that walks to the beat of her own drum. You know, she turns heads when she walks, you know? And I think that was a great dynamic to have. And I think it's a great examination into friendships and how friendships can be a little bit codependent, how you can kind of lose your voice, also with how you are raised, how it affects your outview, your perspective on things. Because the conversation that they had at the end of this book, I think was very telling. Like, you know, it kind of, in one way, you can feel that, you can kind of see where both of them are coming from, but you can also kind of like feel a little bit of sadness for the way that their friendship turned out. that's not necessarily a spoiler, but you can kind of feel a little bit of sadness, a little bit of grief, but then you can also see, like, you know, one of them is satisfied with the way that their life went. And I think this was a great read. I definitely feel like I have to reread this for it to soak in as much as I could. But this would not be my last time reading this. I definitely want to read more of Toni Morrison. I do have more of her on my shelf, which I know y'all see the shelves. I know y'all see the shelves. I done went this whole video and I said nothing about these shelves, honey. Just wait. The video is coming. I promise. I promise. I promise. I promise. It's coming. I gotta get some things together. But hey, she ate that, did she? She ate that. Yes, I did. But those are the 10 books that I read in the month of February. I also want to get into some of the media that I read. Watch. My goodness. Let me start with the music. Okay, so for music, y'all, oh my goodness. It's been a good month for music for me personally. So I've been really listening to Money Talk 2 by Kenny Money. Kenny Money is a independent artist from Memphis. Y'all know what it is with me. I also have been running Act 2 by Sasha Keable. If you are familiar or if you watched my 2025 wrap up, I said that I really enjoyed her project Act Right that came out last year, and this is the deluxe version of that. Really enjoyed that. Also, Juvenile and Megan Thee Stallion dropped BBB a couple days ago, but it goes in this category because I have been listening to it on repeat every once in a while. Like, I have been listening to it. It's been running, okay, getting every single play it deserves. Next up, I want to mention Octane by Toliver. I'm not sure if I mentioned this in my last wrap up. I don't necessarily think I did, but if I did, oh well, it deserves a second spot. That is a banger if I have ever heard one before. It has also made me go back and listen to Hardstone Psycho, which was also one of my favorite Toliver projects. I really love the song Attitude with Charlie Wilson. Love that. Next, I've also been listening to Mudy. I'm putting it on the screen, but she has an EP out. They, them, she. I believe her pronouns are she. Sorry if I am misappropriating, but Mudy, her EP Outlet. I love that EP. I love the song Product. It's one of my favorites. So definitely go check that out. Yeah, I believe she's an independent artist as well. And that is pretty much it for the music I've been loving. Now let's get into the media. Y'all know I don't watch that much media, but this month I watched, y'all know, you probably already know, I watched the America's Next Top Model documentary. And let me tell you, no, accountability was not in the room there. I watched it because I really wanted to kind of just, be a part of the conversation. But also, I remember growing up and watching America's Next Top Model. And at some point in time, I also wanted to model. And I did have a little entryway stint that didn't really go far for real, but I still was inspired by that show. I'm a fashion girl, 2 + 2 = 4. It makes sense. So, yeah. But it was a little I don't know. It made me feel different feelings. I felt really bad for the girls, the contestants that were on there because of what they went through and their experiences. I was really upset that, nobody really took any accountability. And it just was really infuriating to have all these adults, because these girls at the time were very young. The contestants were very young. And to have them on the show and have all these adults around, and especially somebody you admire like Tyra Banks be on there and basically kind of take advantage of you and exploit you in a way, I think was very, very infuriating, very frustrating for them to not take any sorts of accountability. The very last episode really made me sad. And if you watch it, you know what I'm talking about. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but yeah, I think that was a very interesting documentary to watch. Yeah. Next up is Beauty Shop. I love me some Queen Latifah. Beauty Shop is one of my favorite movies. I definitely want to get it on physical, but I just wanted to watch it. It came up on my YouTube and it was like free to watch with ads. And I was like, ads, free to watch with ads. And I was just like, why not? I haven't seen it in a while. And honestly, they don't make movies like that not anymore, but they need to. So bring that back, please, expeditiously. So, okay, so yeah, that is everything that I have read, watched, and listened to this month that I really enjoyed. If we have some similarities, some common ground in the common ground and the things that we watched, listened to, read, let me know in the comments. Let me know some of your highlights from this month. And if nothing else, I think that is it. I don't know, leave me a star in the comments. I'm feeling very shiny today. I don't know. But leave me a star in the comments if you made it to this far in the video. And until next time, thank you for tuning in. And I'll see y'all back in the library. Bye, y'all.